Hello and welcome to this episode of Own the Journey. I'm super excited to be here today with Mr. Tim Brewer from Australia. You can easily see that he's from Australia because he's already out drinking me. So we're going to enjoy a beer where we are focused on helping you navigate through the challenges of business so that you can become more successful. And Tim is a legend in the area. He is going to help us to navigate and learn about some of the worst and best moments of what it means to run a small and medium-sized business. So Tim, for everybody who doesn't know your history, let's just take a few minutes and break it down. So I had the chance to meet you way back, what was it, 7, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years ago?
Right. I don't know, it was Orlando maybe.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's great, firstly a privilege and great to be here. Tom, thanks for having me along. Right now, honestly, it's just good to escape Australia. It's pretty tough getting out right now. Yeah, look, we met at a conference way back in Orlando. I'm not sure how much we should disclose about it. It was a great conference.
Yeah.
And we actually, the first time we met over breakfast, and I came away, and all I could remember is that you ran a business of like 6 people. I don't know if everyone wants to hear this story, but it's kind of funny. And but the actual story was you originally bought the business when it had 6 people, and then we reconnected, and I was like, my poor brain couldn't work out what was going on because you just had so many darn people. I'm like, whoa, what happened? You're like,
We had 60 people.
You had like 60 people at that point.
Right.
So, and obviously like tons more than that now, well over double that size. So, so we've known each other for about 10 years. My background, even though I'm the CEO of a software company called Functionally today, which is an intelligent org chart. Back then, I was the owner in a managed services IT company similar to yourself today at JMark. We're kind of like sister companies. We were based in Australia, and we had just exited to a listed company, and I ended up working in operations for that company for a period of time as they made many other acquisitions, and I got to oversee a lot of the integration for those acquisitions. So
let's not understate that, because you actually consolidated like 7 or 8 businesses into one operating unit across hundreds of employees, right?
Well, that's correct. So there was, we had about 50 staff, so it's not too dissimilar to when I first met you, 54. And the funny thing was, we did not know that they were listing when they purchased us. So I just thought there was a company purchasing us, and we had negotiated the arrangement. And the day before the transaction occurred, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're reverse listing, and we've acquired these other 5 companies simultaneously that you don't know about, and they all started with the letter A. So our business was called Accord, and then there was like all these other A businesses. It was a bit of a joke that they bought the A team, but they had a conglomerate of those companies. We went from 50 people to about 220 staff in 17 locations across Australia.
Wow.
And we had one location, and the CEO visited just after the transaction, and we were chatting about how we operated the business. We're very proud of the work we had done to have a really mature operating model, and said, hey, we need someone to lead integration. And probably without thinking about it, unfortunately, I had said, yeah, I'll help with that as long as you let me do it the way I want to lead the integration. And so I had pretty good fun building trust and across all of those different companies and different locations as we brought together our operating models, which was big, but very interesting, great learning experience for me as well.
Well, and I think one of the things, and so I'm proud to say that over the years we've not only developed a good friendship, but you helped us inside of our business, and now you help by serving on the board of directors for JMark, and you've helped us as an organization just make these massive strides in how we operate, but also how we come to the truth. And I think one of my favorite stories from you was where you had the projects team and the operations team and the financial people like all bickering about what the truth was in an environment, and you actually just broke everything down, and you were able to put it in real simple terms, show them the numbers, and it removed the emotions from that environment so that it became just focused on the truth rather than people's egos, right?
Yeah. Well, it was actually the board of directors, so but it was about those areas of the business, and I can probably tell that story now. It's been long enough, and maybe someone watching the video will hopefully not feel too bad that they're working through something similar. You know, I got to be careful not to mention things that are like too soon.
Sure.
Like, you know, Steve Irwin, one of the greatest Australians. You don't want to mention him because that seems like too soon when you mention that in America. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But Crocodile Dundee, he's still like fighting strong. So we can definitely go there. Yeah, so it's this situation, we'd have our board meetings and everyone would argue in as stronger terms as you can possibly imagine about which area of the business was performing and which area of the business was dragging. And so it took me a while, but I eventually unpicked it all. So I did this really simple graph of the assumed profitability of each of the arms of our business. And everyone just turned on me, honestly, and was real angry at me. And they're like, it's wrong, what are you doing, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, you know, tell me where it's wrong. You know, I'm happy if we've miscalculated something or you think our assumed distribution should be different with cost. And I heard nothing. And 1 month later, I'd roll back up to board meeting and have the same graph. And so some area of the business is losing a huge amount of money and some area of the business is making no money. Obviously didn't want to lose money, so we went and had the tough conversation with customers saying we can't have you if we're making no money off you. And someone renegotiated all our service contracts over like a month. And so overnight we went from kind of losing a lot of money to making so much money that everyone didn't believe we were making as much money as we were making. So, and my only contribution was like the most simple bar graph.
But it was the truth.
But it was the truth.
It was the truth. It came down to it. And I think that's the lesson that we have learned, that in a business that, especially in a business that has many lines of business and gets a little bit complicated, you have to break down the profitability of those businesses by line of business. So you're showing the revenue and the cost with delivering whatever that product or service is, so that you can put an owner on it, assign responsibility, and let the numbers speak for themselves, rather than just arguing about a bottom line where nobody actually understands all the pieces up above it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've probably heard this before, but you know, in a bigger business, you've just got to give everyone a map and a compass and teach them how to use it.
Right.
And so I'm constantly thinking when I'm, you know, being a great wingman in a business like Jmark, that I'm super proud of my role there, or whether I'm leading as the CEO of my own business, thinking like, it's no good if I'm telling people what to do. I need to work out how to get that truth to them, get the information to them, get them the power to make decisions with that information, and tell them where north is. And if you can do that, generally speaking, you've got to get the heck out the way and let them go and perform, and then be there to pat them on the back and high five them along the way. And I'm good with high fives. I'm into that. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, hey, let's take that and speaking of the board of directors that you kind of probably got exposed to really for the first time in that environment, and then we shifted into Jmark and you helped me to establish a board of directors, and I was like, well, I'm not sure we need a board. Why do we need a board? And it's been one of the best things that we have ever done as an organization. If you'll share with everybody watching why you think it's so important for a company, even a small business, 20, 30, 40 people, to put a board in place that provides some governance, some advice, and just sound thinking around the business. Why should they consider doing it all?
Yeah, look, I think it's for every business owner that's watching, there's normally a storyline to how you became a business owner, and part of that is like being able to have agency and autonomy in your work and in your role, right? So you get to this point, you're like, I finally established a business, I've started off from scratch. You get to the point where you can make the decisions. The last thing you want is a board now being there dicking around with your decisions, right? Like, oh, here's what you need to do, and you need to do that, and you need to do this. So I can see the friction people have to then establish that, but I think of it in kind of two dimensions: why it's important that you have a board, and why you're really intentional and careful about how you select who the board is. And I guess I went through this process. I didn't intend to be on your board. I just helped you get one started and communicate the value. The first thing is that you need to live, you know, people talk about having a long game. I'm pretty sure you guys have that saying in the US. I try and have a long game, longer than my life. And you're going to live longer than you, and the whole business is based around you, and you're like Superman in the business, and you're telling everyone what to do. You're stuck in that business is going to be your prison like it may have felt when you were working for someone else, or maybe you had a bad boss at some point. Or even worse. Because when you disappear or you can't go on a holiday because everything falls in a hole, very high stress, not really the outcome that you want. And a board helps kind of lift your thinking above you being the operator in the business to you being the owner in the business. Even if the board is placed by you and you own 100% of the company, that's a really important mental shift to play both the role in the business as the CEO and the role on the board as an executive director in the company. And one day you'll make that transition where you're no longer the CEO maybe of the business. The business might get sold, you might put someone else in that role. And I think that's important to replace, not have that all in the one space in the business.
So a couple of different things that I heard you say there that I think are worth maybe diving into a little bit deeper. The first one is, as the CEO, when you move into an environment where you've got that board of directors, you've got to learn how to shift your hat, because there's the operator CEO hat.
Yeah.
And then there's like the board of directors hat. So I look at it as though I'm not operating in the business. I am an investor in the business, and am I getting a return both on my time and my energy and my money on the business itself? So it allows you to abstract yourself from the day to day and look at it a little differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'll have to say you've done a fantastic job of that. The way I think about it, and maybe if I kind of take that analogy and I'll place it into a couple of other roles that everyone probably has in their business. And let's say you've got a COO. COOs, CEOs tend to do a lot of different roles in the business. And one of the things that we talked about a lot is, well, Tom, what happens if your position in the company was actually 4 or 5 different roles? Like, how would you articulate those roles? And so instead of having to own everything, the mentality is, hey, if I was playing on a sporting field and leading a high-performing sporting team, I may go and be the striker at one point during the game just for 5 minutes, because that's what the game needed.
And what's a striker?
A striker in soccer is, sorry, if I'm going to play the tight end, maybe. I don't know. Like,
there you go.
I'm thinking, America football, maybe I should have used that analogy. But you can play different positions in the field. And business is often like that. So what a part of telling the truth is, hey, I'm Tom Douglas, I'm the CEO. I play 4 or 5 different roles in this company. Once you have articulated those roles, you can ask the question, well, which one do you want to do? And instead of fighting, giving anything up, I know what happens. The first thing you're like, I wanted that role.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do I get rid of these 4 other roles? Like, straight away, you've got the clarity and the articulation of what that other role might be. Let's call it, ran strategic finance for years, and we would sit in the middle of the night doing budgets for the business as would lead into, and at some point you're like, I don't want to be strategic finance anymore. But it took us articulating what that role was, rather than just thinking, oh, the CEO does all the detailed budgets for the organization. And so we broke up those roles. So I think it's really important. One of those roles is your governance role. And so you're an investor in the business, which you talked about, which is not the CEO. You can be a CEO and not be an investor.
Yeah.
And so we see and find this a lot in the company I'm now leading. We encourage people to think about the role that they're playing separate to their position.
That's pretty amazing. So let's pause, put a pin in that, because I certainly want to come back and learn about the organizational design and all those kind of things that you're doing, and shift back to when a CEO is operating in that role, not only in the governance piece of it, do you have the ability to really look at the performance of the business as whether or not it's a good investment, but it's also a vehicle maybe to transition it to your family or transition it to sell at some point. Because if you're an owner operator stuck in a business and everything relies on you, the value of the business is a whole lot lower.
Yeah.
And so you have to think about the longevity of the company, not only for yourself, but for your entire team, right?
Yeah, your team, your family, and your own health. Like, how many people... I've got an uncle in Australia.
Yeah.
He was very, very senior in the police, and he passed away not just after he retired. And you hear that story quite often, right? Like, oh, XYZ retired and then they pass away. I'm like, what the heck? Like, is that the worst timing ever? That just after they are able to go and be free and go do stuff, that they lose that opportunity to do that. And I think there's probably something connected to the fact that they had this thing that they lived for many, many, many years. And so I think if you run a business, you have to play the long game longer than your own life. And so that can be transitioning the business to something else. That can be, hey, my time is now so valuable, and I've, in my age and wisdom, worked out, hey, I really enjoy doing this other thing. I know what it is, semi-professional barefoot skiing in your case. And I want to go spend more time doing that, and I only get to do that twice a year right now because I'm play this position in a company.
I see.
And so understanding what your motivations and where you get energy from, and making sure you still have agency over the roles that you play is really, really important.
And it gives energy back to the organization, because when you structure it right, you actually level the entire company up, and it benefits from all of those roles being identified and you having a different insight of making sure that it can run autonomously from you. Because if you get hit by a bus, you don't want the business to collapse.
The strangest thing I observe is that a CEO that wants to tell everyone what to do feels like chaos to their team. A CEO that's happy giving away that power in the right way, it just feels so calm and consistent. And I bet you your customers feel the same way when they've just got that like really, really consistent outcomes when they're dealing with you. And so for every CEO or senior leader that's watching this video, just because you like the chaos doesn't mean that it's good for your company, doesn't mean it's good for your people. I can guarantee you it's not good for your customers.
Yeah, that's good wisdom. All right. Shifting back to organizational design. So over the years of having to work and like map your way through all of these different companies and integrations or acquisitions, you figured out that there was this massive challenge in the way that organizations functions and the way that they had to move work design responsibilities as a business grew or shrank or adjusted to the market. Like they didn't have a good tool to do it. So you decided just to build it.
Yeah, and that sounds really, really simple and easy when you say it like that. Firstly, we think a lot about complex at the time.
Yeah.
So probably fast forwarding, I exited the business. I came and lived in the US. I spent half the year in Tampa Bay, living on an island next to Derek Jeter. And then I spent the other half of the year living in Newport Beach, next to Newport Elementary, where our kids went to school, like 3 houses up. And I love surfing. That's where I get a lot of energy from. So I was able to go surfing like in 15th Street, which is approximately like a 45-degree angle from our front gate, and I just ran down across the sand. Life was really, really good. That same year, we got to work a little bit closer together in 2013.
Yeah.
I also did a stint with Dropbox, which was really fun, helping them with their channel program, and for another company that's now exited as well and done really well, called ConnectWise. And after that year, I thought I'd just go and build another business, but it kind of didn't materialize. I couldn't find anything big enough or interesting enough to work on, so I just ended up helping a lot of other people. And the most common thing I got asked for is like, oh, hey, Tim, we need to restructure this department, or hey, Tim, we need to restructure this other area of the business. And firstly, I don't like the word restructure. It really bothers me. Yeah. It means that you've been reactive for like 3 years, and now stuff's really broken, and we need to go and kind of like pull it all apart. It's really disruptive. And I don't come from a consulting background. There's actually this whole consulting industry building around that with BCG and McKinsey and Deloitte. So if you're a much bigger company, maybe you pay millions of dollars to have someone come and help with that and deliver you a PowerPoint slide at the end saying how you should be structured. And I felt like there was another way. I felt like there was a way that CEOs could do it themselves. So self-structure, I felt like there was probably a better way where it's a bit more continuous. Mm-hmm. So you were making lots of incremental or little changes rather than this big disruptive change. And quite honestly now, post-COVID, things change so fast that by the time you've started the project and got to the end and got a conclusion, I guarantee you it's like out of date and you've got to start again, or at least not as perfect as it should have been. And so I was sitting with an organization helping them structure here in the US in San Francisco, and had come up with this kind of reverse engineering approach to helping CEOs make their own decisions around structure and their teams see why they're making those decisions, so giving them more clarity. And someone built a software prototype of the process I was using that I didn't intend to be software. I didn't want to become a CEO of another company. It's very, very hard work, as you know. Yeah. And I agreed that I'd go and try and kill that problem, and I couldn't. The more people I talked to, the more I realized there is no way to lead continuous org design or to have agile organization design and lead that as a CEO. So that's the journey we're on.
Yeah.
And that's how we came to founding Functionally. And we kind of, the headline for Functionally is we help people fix the gaps, cracks and overlaps that appear in their organization structures. And
but the constant improvement is a real thing. I mean, every business, especially as you mentioned during COVID, it's like we're bobbing and weaving, and even with the work shortages or the people shortages that we have in work, we have people leaving, and we have to figure out how to move those responsibilities throughout the organization until we can maybe fill a role, maybe not fill a role because we can't find people. And so the software actually helps you to fill those gaps and cracks.
Yeah, well, it helps tell the story. Firstly, it's a place to document that. I mean, let's stop talking about, I definitely didn't want to get in a conversation about like the software we're building, but what it can say is like the funny stuff that I see happen in organizations when I'm kind of sitting in there under the kimono having a look. And so one of the really hilarious things I often see is like, Tom has finished up with the organization, obviously not you, but like, I'm like, oh, cool, when do they finish up? And I'm like, oh, in, 14 days. I'm like, okay, cool. What did they do? And I was like, I don't know. Like, should you replace the role or should you distribute the stuff that they were doing? I'm not really sure. I'm like, okay. So what's going to go wrong when they leave in 14 days? Because there ain't no way human resources is going to be able to place someone into that role inside of 14 days from like advert to landing.
Right.
I'm like, and they cross their fingers and they're like, I've let HR know. Sure enough, 14 days time, stuff's going to blow up, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is then you just kind of run into this really crazy cycle. So this is when people leave, you end up with these big gaps in the organization. Or worse still, someone sitting in the organization doing something that is for a product you don't even sell anymore. No one was able to see that they're doing this thing, and at some point they're going to get blindsided by that when the organization realizes, and often it's not very pleasant. Then the other thing that happens is when someone's going to hire a job, and so I always am staggered at how much of a truth this is, but it works just like this. Hey, Tom, we need another person in my team. Can I hire another person? And you're like, no. I'm like, yeah, but Tom, man, we're so overworked and I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose Sally, Jill, and Jax. And you're like, oh man, if we lose them, we are in so much trouble. And so we sit down, you're like, okay, one extra person. So I'll run to the CFO. I'm like, hey, Tom's approved another hire. And they're like, oh my goodness, you just blew up my budget model. We don't have room to another hire. And so that's a problem. Then I go to HR and I said, hey, Tom's approved a hire. I've just got budget from the CFO. Do your thing. And I'm like, what person are you going to hire? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what job title are they going to have? I'm like, marketing coordinator? And you just kind of make, okay, Google, marketing coordinator, template job description has nothing to do with what you actually need in the organization. And they pump that out. You get a bunch of people interview. You find someone that you like. You give them a job offer, they finally accept. Meanwhile, stuff's blowing up because they arrive day one, and I guarantee you this is what happens. Hey, look, I know what we hired you for and what you read in the job description, but I actually need you to do all of this other stuff. And that person's like, I didn't sign up for that job. So many people, when you tell that story, are like, that's exactly what happens over and over and over again. Wow. And it leads to a very reactively built organization with a reactive structure, with reactive responsibilities.
And very inefficient and costly.
My goodness. Costly, inefficient. It's very bad for mental health. And that's probably the thing that motivates me the most, is I would see these symptoms in organizations over and over and over again in all different industries, in all different places in the world. It's like, surely someone has solved this. This is such a big problem. And the people that are doing the best job right now of solving it are like Boston Consulting Group. And like I said before, unless you have $1 million to spend, you're not going to be able to get them on the phone. So, and even their method is very intensive, project-based change. But they're probably the best in the world at the moment. So, or awesome. One of the big institutional consulting firms. So effectively, we think there's this huge opportunity to help medium and small business overcome that challenge and get on the front foot with how they structure their organization, who reports to who, what they do, and how much of that they do. And as a CEO, I think that's gold to be able to get the right people in the right seat on the bus.
And for them to have clarity of success. It's not just running around reacting and doing whatever flies in. It's this is success for you. So that can align to incentive plans, that can align to growth and measuring success, so you know how to scale the business properly over time. There's a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah, as well as what we talked about before, which is the ability for you as the CEO to take the different roles that you play and to be able to move them one day off to someone else to do that role. And I think that's really empowering. It also takes the mental friction out of people being able to move role within the organization without it being so emotive.
But I think one of the things that happens within small business is you have one person who is wearing 4 hats anywhere in the company, and over time those responsibilities grow and grow and grow until you need to have somebody that just does that, but you don't really know that until you can articulate what those roles are, how much time it's taking, the value that it makes or contributes to the business, or whether it's not something that you should say, no, let's just stop doing that.
Yep. Well, and you think about the person that's doing the role, like it's real risky for them to give off responsibility and maybe not become as needed to the organization. And so often you get people and they are like, I'll take that role, I'll take that role, and they're just like hoarding it all, they're doing a terrible job at all, but you can't do anything because if they disappeared, they're like, they're like a pirate, they're just hoarding all their treasure in your organization, and that's really, really unhealthy. It's unhealthy for them, it's unhealthy for the organization, and so we do think a lot about organizational health. There's a lot of things that contribute to that. So organizational design is just one of them.
Sure.
It's an important one and it's very foundational, but one of the great things that I've got to see you do is also lead a really healthy culture in the organization as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, please don't hear that there's just one aspect to it. It's just a very important aspect, and it might be the aspect that you're not paying attention to. And so if there's one thing that I encourage people to do is just be more intentional about, organization design.
Nice.
And that doesn't need a bit of software to do that. That can be drawing it on a whiteboard, that can be doing sticky notes on your boardroom wall, that can be doing it in a notepad privately, because often these things are very sensitive, obviously. And so, just do something that is more intentional about how you structure your organization and helping people understand what they should be doing to bring success to the mission of your org.
Awesome. All right, so as a part of all of those challenges, you've had to go raise funds and go through the challenges of fundraising.
Yeah.
You've had to put more oversight, more governance. You've had to figure out your way through safe notes and had to figure out your way through all these different things. Talk to us at a high level about some of the challenges of what it means to take an idea, start to prove that the idea has the potential to turn into something, and then turn it into a business model where you can actually go out and interview, raise funds, deal with PE. It's not a small thing.
It is not a small thing at all. And every business owner that's done any of that will attest to that. But for people who have maybe not been through the process, or maybe were lucky enough to have friends or family be able to support them into buying, or maybe had their own capital to be able to buy into a business, firstly, it's not for everyone. Like, there's a lot of ways to build a business. I'm not into vanity metrics, and the fact that we have raised funds and raised a fair amount of funds, and probably will continue to raise, is by nature what we intended to do, and it's what we think the right path to market is. So it's not for everyone.
Right.
But if you are in that place and you are going to go raise funds, then we can definitely talk about how much hard work that is. So the first thing before you make the decision to raise funds is thinking about what is certain in the business and what is not certain. And when you start a business day one, there's very few certainties. And if you don't, it's okay to like, hey, this is our future, this is where we think we're skating towards the puck. Is that an American saying I can use here?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, hey, I'm skating towards this puck. We're not 100% if it's there, but we think there's this huge opportunity there. Really, all you're probably certain about is, I see this problem that I'm trying to solve. And as a CEO, you can't make everything certain day one. So you got to pick the thing that you've got to make certain next. And I guess thinking about the sequence of those things that you need to be able to attract good investors that want to partner with you. And I've found just thinking about I have certainty buckets, so I know what buckets I'm trying to fill to bring certainty at any given stage of the business, and know what you're not trying to bring certainty to. And then when you talk to investors, just being super upfront. So if you're in an angel stage business, say there's this big market and there's this big problem and we have no product, but we're going to build a product, and the goal by next milestone is to try and work out if we can solve that problem with software and prove that out. And rather than, hey, we've got this big thing, and project a position that you're further on than you are. And so at each stage, that's been how, I'm better off telling everyone about how I think about it, because then they can go and think about how they think about it, rather than I did this magic thing and this was the silver bullet, and I talked to 4 people, and I was in Adelaide, Australia, and I was having a beer at a bar, and I was like, hey guys, like, it's really good that we finally closed our pre-seed round, and they asked 3 questions about the business, and we're like, hey, we should do a seed round. I'm like,
or not.
I mean, we could. And then they're like, yeah, we're going to put in this amount of money at this valuation. What do you think? And they just invested in the previous round. It's like, I guess we might be doing a seed round then. And it was literally over a beer at a bar that our last round of funding, which is just complete, which we raised $2.7 million US for our seed stage progression. And so, but that doesn't mean everyone should go. I mean, everyone probably should go have their drink occasionally at the bar, but that, the secret, I think, when I reflect back on us being successful in those steps, is know what you can bring certainty to, talking really truthfully about that, talking to enough people about that, and then knowing what your next milestone is, and going and delivering, and understanding maybe you can't. Maybe we couldn't work out how to make software be helpful to this problem, and just tell people, like, it's an early stage company, like 97%, and I would say to the team, 97% chance we'll die. They're like, what? Remember that before we took our first funding, I was like, I'm trying to kill the idea. Can you help me kill the idea?
Yeah.
Like, Tim, I just invested in your business. Why are you asking me to kill? Oh, that's right. We've taken investment now. We can't use that. We're now 97% likely to die. And obviously we're progressed from that, but there's still like a lot of risk attached to early stage business. And so the more upfront you are about that, and like, I don't want it to die. I'm just trying to find the next set of risks that I can control to get us to sustainable.
And as you've progressed through that, I think one of the things that has been impactful for me that you've done is that you didn't go into it with a preconceived notion of exactly what the problem was and exactly what the resolution was. It was, you let the market tell you. So you started, and you're literally following the buck where the market is telling you that they have the pain, rather than you trying to be the smartest guy in the world when it comes to this problem. It's like, no. The marketplace is going to tell me, and I'm going to listen.
Well, I tell you the funny, I'm a slow learner. So there's 2 things about me that your viewers probably don't know. One, I'm very forgetful. So I try to do only 3 things at once, because if I do a 4th thing, I forget about the first thing. And so I just try and keep things to 3s. It's worked for me really well. The second thing is I'm a pretty simple guy. So I try and break things down into like a framework of thinking that I can apply in my background thought. If it's too complex, I can't do that. And then I have to remember it, and then it's really hard because I can only remember the 3 things. So I try and think of this like ways to deal with people, or ways to approach business, or ways to approach problems. And so I'm still learning all the time from my team. I'm still learning, even, I might sit on your board of directors, but I'm constantly learning from you, constantly learning from your team. And so the thing that I learned around customers was, I thought I knew how to talk about our business. Like, I had this pitch, I could say, hey, people want to design or map and design their organization. And I would sit with the most valuable thing I did would sit with customers and have them tell me about their problem. And what happened is, if you listen to customers enough, they will tell you how to talk about your business. And so the most common thing, and I'll tell you, I was like, I have a great co-founder, Damien. He lives in England. I was an investor in his business, and was very lucky that the timing worked out for me to work with him. He's way better and smarter than me. If you ever have a chance to get to England, you should definitely interview him on this.
We'll do that.
He is amazing. And he would tell me that, and I was like, dude, I've been in business like a long time. I know how to pitch a business. But then what happened one day is I realized that people over and over and over again said, Tim, people slip through the cracks in my organization, and they're still doing this role that we didn't know that they were doing, and they've been doing it for like 7 years. Incredible waste. But we discovered it now, so we're going to let them go. And I'm like, whoa, what? Like, are they good? They have organizational knowledge that you can replace someone else in the organization. And then that's where I was, one day went, actually everyone calls it a crack in their organization. And then people would say, hey, we've just got this huge resource gap. And they'd say it over and over and over again everywhere I went. But it took me a long, maybe 12 or 18 months to realize that people have gaps, cracks,
and
overlaps in their organization.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, your face when I said that, and everyone's face whenever I say that, everywhere I go, in like one sentence, people are like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for building what you're building. That's my problem.
So it's 100% listening, customer, let them tell you what their problems are. Don't try to convince them when it comes to that.
Just have tons and tons of empathy for what they're saying to you, and just listen and listen and listen to as many people as you can. And if you're good at joining the dots, at some point you'll be like, aha, I am hearing something very consistent. Your job when you build a product is to create value for someone and not to change their behavior. The job is to like follow their behavior and work out how in that you can create value for them.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so fundraising, obviously big challenge.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things that you shared with me is that you were very selective. You didn't want to have investors in your organization that were a pain in your ass. I mean, you just didn't want that thumb, that whack oversight, whatever it was. You were like, nope. And you said no to a lot of money that you could have said yes to.
Yeah, particularly this round for whatever reason. And some of them were really nice. I would have taken their money if they're watching this video. And I'll happily take it in our A round. Yeah, I didn't. When you're a young man, and trust me, I'm like really old, just have good skin, yeah. When you're a young man, you tend to be willing to do things for the opportunity. You're like, this is a huge opportunity, and I was good at... I'm just going to take it, and yeah, there's some dickhead that I have to deal with, but I'm cool with that. Like, I'm resilient.
Yeah.
And what you do as you get older is you work out, actually for me, I don't want to have to put myself through that. And so another way to say that, probably the inverse of someone's a dickhead, which I know is common in a common language in America. I don't mean it's more common that there's dickheads, but they're everywhere in the world. It's like, find people that are kind, find people that care about the people that they work with, want the best for them and have their back. And we filter very hard everyone that we deal with on our team as an investor. I've worked so hard to get to this point, and I know you have too, where you are the owner of a business and have agency and autonomy in your work. I do not want to choose to put someone that I then have to work with that takes that agency and autonomy away.
Right.
I want people around us that are championing what we're doing, that care for me and Damien as humans, and that want the best for us. And that's going to mean some bad, tough, terrible situations sometimes. And I don't want that to change. And if they're a dick, they're definitely going to be bad news to your well-being and your plans. And so we just filter hard on that. So yeah, I would happily say no to money than put myself in that situation at this stage.
So you can apply that to a board of directors. You can apply that to fundraising in your team. You want people that are giving you energy, not stealing your energy.
Oh yeah,
it really matters.
Be a giver, not a stealer of energy.
Yeah.
Now there's two. I'm going to play that out too. There's something actually I'm working through at the moment that I'm happy sharing.
Yeah. Sure.
So is this person a dickhead? Yeah. Are they kind? And if the answer is yes, they're a dickhead, it's like an easy filter.
Yeah.
But it's slightly different. I'm sorry if you're going to have to filter all this out too, by the way. So good. The legal team has said, we're cool. They said just keep going with the Australian language, which is great. So that's a one extreme, it's a pretty extreme filter, but the other might be like, hey, I'm working with this person and they're just taking all my energy away. And so we have this thing we're trying at functionally at the moment, and that is, well, I'm going to communicate to you, but you're going to receive that a different way to me. And so the more I can understand how you would like to communicate, the more I can communicate in a way that's natural for you, which it might not give you energy, but at least it doesn't take your energy away. And so I work with a lot of engineers, and so what I've learned, and I'll just use me and Damien as an example rather than call out someone else on our team, if that's okay. So if I write things to Damien like in written form, maybe we use a product called Slack. If I write to him a message on Slack and then he writes back and we ended up in like a long trail message, I'm showing him that I care about how he wants to communicate. He likes thinking through something, he likes writing it down, organizing it, editing it. I know he cares about me when something happens and he just picks up the phone and calls me because I'm super verbal. And so really caring about how other people communicate and putting yourself in their shoes and having empathy for them is super valuable in business, which means as a CEO, you're going to spend a lot of time thinking about how do I best work with other people in my team? How do I do things that are good for them? Communicate on their terms and be a situational leader rather than like, fuck you guys, I'm going to do whatever I do because I'm the CEO. You're never going to attract A-team people into your business, and they're definitely not going to be happy if you can. So even if you've trapped them there with your ways. So that for us, we spend a lot of time internally, and we tell new team members that come like, yeah, we get it, you're an introvert. But when you're communicating with that person, you're probably best picking up the phone. And you'll show them you care when you pick up the phone. So giving and receiving energy is a different thing. That happens in your work relationships, that happens outside of work, but also happens in the type of work that you do. And so it's important you think a lot about where you get energy from. And my equation is like, it's cool to do 20% of stuff that takes your energy away, but you better do 80% of stuff that gives energy to you.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Okay, I want to shift gears one more time.
Let's do it.
One of my favorite things that you taught me in troubleshooting within the business is defining the problems based on the 3 Ps. And we spent a lot of time talking about what that means for us. I'm so passionate about it. I put it in my book because I believe everybody needs to know about it. Share your wisdom.
Well, look, in fairness, I probably didn't invent it. I just probably like absorbed it as I went through my own challenges as a leader. Stuff breaks in organizations.
Always.
Customer calls, rips off both your ears. They're like, I'm super unhappy, I'm going to leave. I hate you, Tom, like whatever they say. And they're normally, if someone's really high, sometimes they'll say inappropriate things or things they don't really mean. They're just trying to get a response or like communicate how hurt they are. And hurt people sometimes hurt people. And so they do that and you're like, oh my goodness, this is the worst. We're going to lose all this revenue. And so what do? Like an organization of people, you go and find the person that you think is responsible for that. They may not be, especially if you don't have good accountabilities and responsibilities in your company. You're just going to find a person where you can kind of unload to or point the finger at. And so as a leader, that's really unhealthy. So I have this little I told you I was like pretty simple, and I have this framework in the back of my head. The first thing I think, first P, is like product. It's like, is our product right? Does it create value? Is it the right product for this customer? And so it might not create enough value. It might be a total product problem that you just had because you promised something to the customer and you had a product that didn't deliver it. And that's no one's problem except whoever decides what products you sell. So you should be going and talking to that person. And if that's you, because you don't have that distributed, then that's going to be a problem. The second thing is like, okay, you've got a product, this thing, beer, good beer.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers. And that is a good product. But you may not have the processes around the product to have it consistently delivered. And so you're going to work through, do we have a process for that? Do we train on the process? Is everyone aware of it? You might have a process, but no one knows what it is. That happens a lot. And if that's the problem, then go fix the processes that exist around the delivery of your great high-value product, or go and train people on it. And then after you've worked through that as the problem, you're like, we have a great product, the training's in place, everyone's received the training, then maybe you've got a people problem. And the people problem's not someone intentionally being bad. It might be you have someone doing that role that is not competent at it. You might have someone doing the role that gets no energy from it, and it's their whole life, and so they're sad and depressed because you've given them a job that is like totally counter to where they get energy from. It could be that. If that's the case, then fix that. But then maybe at the end of all of that process, you might have someone that's just like, screw you, Tom, I'm going to do whatever I want and I don't care what the impact to our customers is. And then you've got to deal with that. That's a tougher conversation.
Right.
And that's kind of the 3 Ps is how I think through. When something goes wrong, I get a call from a customer, and I know you've adopted that a lot in the way you are addressing things internally.
Not just internally, it's where I was getting ready to go, is that we actually have broken that down into our incident reports for our clients. So was this a product problem, was it a process problem, or was it a people problem? Because one of our core values in JMark is honesty. And if we have a people problem, I want our clients to know, like, hey, we addressed it.
Yeah.
We did have a people problem. We've trained on it. We've coached on it, whatever the case may be. Or it was a process and we've improved that process. Or we sold a product, whether it was a computer, server, a service, whatever it was, and it had a gap in it that we needed to close. And that helps people to get closure when they know, yep, they had a people problem. They took responsibility for it. They're going to fix it. I'm happy I can move on.
Wow. That's really cool. I didn't know that you had got down to that level of detail.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think I came up with it, but it definitely helps me, and hopefully someone can go, oh yeah, the 3 Ps, that seems like I should stop going and yelling at all my team. That would be a pretty good outcome.
It's pretty amazing. It's helped our organization to shift and focus our energy into solving the problem where the problem really is, rather than reacting and being that chaotic environment that so many small businesses deal with.
Yeah.
So, very good.
Yeah, say no to chaos.
Yeah, no more chaos. I agree. Yeah. All right, Tim. Thanks for being here with us today, man.
Pleasure.
It's been legendary on the journey with you. Cheers to you, and thanks for owning your journey.
Yeah, and to all of you, good luck with your journey.